Planning 1.1. Within Planning 1.1, you developed a detailed, appropriate and thoughtful proposal for action to serve the need in the community. This is where your community project goal becomes an actual proposal for action. So we're going to begin with thoughtful considerations. So now that you've established your goal and global context based on personal interest, established prior learning, subject-specific knowledge, and have engaged in research, you now need to create a proposal for action by considering important factors and creating criteria for success. In order to do this, you need to read the important considerations on the following page and think about 3 to 4 important considerations that are relevant to your community project. You will most likely find that there are other unique considerations to think deeply about for your community project, so please make sure you add these as well. So our first is cultural understanding. Do you need to consider differences in culture and how these can be respected and celebrated in your community project? For environmental considerations, do you need to consider the impact your community project will have on the natural environment? Human rights and dignity. How will you ensure that human rights and dignity are respected as you engage in service learning? Are you able to promote equality through your community project? Of animal welfare, do you need to consider animal welfare and the impact your community project could have on animals? Community factors, what special factors of the community that you are serving do you need to consider? So sensitivity and empathy, how will you remain sensitive to the needs of those impacted by the need in your community? How can you show empathy? And language needs, do you need to consider language needs and language barriers? How will you make sure language needs are met? We'll now look at creating success criteria. So when you have selected the important considerations relevant to your community project, you need to transfer each consideration to success criteria. You will need to think deeply about what each important consideration will look like at the different degrees of success. In your process journals, draw up the following success criteria layout. This scaffold is similar to all the assessment task sheets you've received from all your teachers and that you've used for self-assessment in both formative and summative assessment tasks. So at the top, you place your 3 to 4 considerations. Then down the side, we have our degrees of success. So 7 to 8 is excellent, 5 to 6 is satisfactory, 3 to 4 is adequate, and 1 to 2 is limited. So you'll see that for this community project, they were creating an anti-bullying comic. And the consideration 1 is the anti-bullying comic has characters that show how to cope with negative feelings and how to find ways to be positive and treat others with kindness. So for a 7 to 8 excellent, they're going to be working towards the characters in the comic clearly show how to cope with negative feelings, and they show an example of how to find ways to be positive and treat others with kindness. In 5 to 6 satisfactory, the characters in the comic show how to cope with negative feelings and they show an example of how to find ways to be positive and treat others with kindness. However, this was not as clear as intended. 3 to 4 adequate, the characters in the comic show how to cope with negative feelings, but they don't show examples of how to find ways to be positive and treat others with kindness. And 1 to 2 limited, unfortunately the characters in the comic do not show how to cope with negative feelings or show examples of how to find ways to be positive and treat others with kindness. So you can see that you're developing a clear explanation of the different degrees of success that your community project can begin to work towards. And as you actually put your community project goal into action, you want to be aiming for that 7 to 8 band continuously. So we'll now look at our action proposal. The action proposal is where we take our community project goal and we place this into a proposal for action. So the next step is to create a visualization of your community project proposal for action that contains the following information. Number 1, the community you are serving. Number 2, the need you're addressing within this community. Number 3, how you plan to address this need and the type of service you will engage in. Number 4, the global context that your community project fits within. And number 5, how you will know when you've been successful. In your process journal, draw the scaffold on the following page. If you have a device that does not allow you to do this, simply draw this on a piece of paper, take a picture, and paste the image into your process journal. So begin with our first circle that looks at the community you are serving. The second one, the need you are addressing. The third, how you will address the need and the type of service you will be engaged in. The global context and the area you're exploring within the global context. And the last circle, how you'll know when you've been successful. So here's an example from last year. The community they're serving is the middle school at Good Shepherd Lutheran College. The need is the increased stress and anxiety that can come with moving up the year level. And they're going to create a book that promotes happiness and ways to positively cope with stress and anxiety through mindfulness. This is a direct service. And the global context is identities and relationships, and they're exploring within this global context is promoting a positive mental well-being. And they'll know they've been successful when their peers in Year 9 read this and give them positive feedback of how this book helped them cope with stress and anxiety through mindfulness. Make sure you fill in the proposal for action A3 scaffold and glue this on our middle school wall so your peers and teachers can see the service learning you are engaging in. Decorate your proposal, make it stand out, and enjoy others celebrating your service learning and cheering you along.